Right, Roger. In 2018, there is a movie that probably had one of the simplest and one of the most straightforward marketing campaign, and yet became one of the most successful movies of that year. And I'm talking about Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri.
Now, that is not the sort of name of a film that gets you sitting up bolt upright thinking, wow, I'm going to have to get out and buy a ticket for that. I mean, Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Wow. I mean, it's not Star Wars or Terminator or Die Hard, is it? It just doesn't sound that exciting. And I seem to remember thinking exactly that when I first saw the adverts for it. But, as you say, one of the most successful films of that year, and an absolutely engrossing movie. It sucks you in. The characterization, it's emotional, it's exciting, it's sad, it's uplifting. It has all sorts of raw emotions in there. And I guess that this is film marketing after all. We talk about usually about how a film was marketed. We also have a bit of a rant about the film itself, but the actual concept, once you get beyond the slightly boring heading, Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, the whole idea of the film is about drawing attention to a specific thing, namely that Mildred, who's the main character in the film, unfortunately her daughter had been raped and killed a year earlier. She hires three billboards outside of the town she lives in to effectively give the police a kick up the backside to get on and solve this crime. So the film is about marketing. It's about how to draw attention to something and get people to take action. And that's fantastic because that's, not only can we talk about film marketing of the film, the fact is the film has a basic thread that it's about drawing people's attention and getting them to take action.
You are so right. And I never really thought of it in that way. Thank you very much for bringing this, because for me, this title feels like a news headline.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So you've got all these layers, stories within stories. I mean, you could argue you've got three billboards almost, representing the three acts of a typical story: the setup, the conflict, the resolution. But also, if you think about this, so you've got the title of a movie, as you said, which is almost like more a working title. And then we'll come up with something really exciting down the line. But in fact, it's almost like a statement. It's a news headline from a newspaper. And then you've got the way in which, obviously, some of the byline, have summarized the film. It's also really quite intriguing because it simply says, a woman rents three billboards to call attention to her daughter's unsolved rape and murder. Full stop. That's it.
Yeah.
And you keep kind of just adding elements of news headlines and story, and what you want for the audience to go, I want to know how this what conclusion this is going to reach. How will she, or will she indeed, get resolution by using this method? And once you get sight and get to watch the trailers, I was completely sold. I really wanted to see this story because I was just curious about the characters and how are they going to react and deal with essentially the three billboards creating complete havoc in the small town of Ebbing.
Yeah, and the marketing of the film with the poster was absolute genius because it showed the back of the billboards, so you can't actually see what's on the billboards. And again, you just think, I want to know what's on those billboards. I want to be able to drive past them and turn around and come back and see what's on the other side of them. So, again, I keep coming back to it. I like simplicity, but that is just simplicity genius, isn't it? Absolute simplicity genius, creating anticipation and desire.
And what I like, obviously, it's the British filmmaker Martin McDonagh. I don't know if you've seen In Bruges and Seven Psychopaths. So, I mean, I was already thinking, well, if it's as good as or better than what he's done so far. And I will confess, as soon as I heard that Frances McDormand and Woody Harrelson and a few others were in, I thought, we're going to watch and witness a story unfolding, delivered by some incredible performers, screen performers. I mean, Sam Rockwell, which I've not seen for a while since a few of the things I've seen in. It was just, and each time, a new character was introduced in a story, you would just say, oh my God, him, her. And all those characters just kind of carry the story so well. It's a delight to watch. It's a delight also to observe the cinematography, but how they explore the sense of injustice, indifference, sometimes racism, sexism. There's all sort of really kind of hard hitting topics being covered, but using humor so well as well.
And it is dialogue heavy, but that's not a criticism. It's good dialogue. In a certain respect, it reminds me of Tarantino type dialogue. Some of the monologues that the characters go off on are actually quite long. I'm minded of the scene where Mildred effectively takes down the local priest, and she basically just dismantles his argument layer by layer by layer, and she's talking, and he's basically just stood there, and you can see he's just drained of all his humility as she just lays into him, and that's so well written. And again, Woody Harrelson, as you've said, probably not my favourite actor, I have to say, Pascal. There's quite a few roles that he's played where I've just thought, nah, I just don't like that. But in this one, again, absolutely and utterly believable character, so believable. And the letter that he leaves behind for his wife is heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking, but so well written. You'll probably have tears, and the delivery is spectacular. But yeah, it's all about redemption and forgiveness, isn't it?
It is, and that's what I like about this movie. The characters are complex, they're multi-layered, which is, again, a credit to Martin McDonagh and as well as the cast, whereby, in the same film, you can have someone doing creating a scene which is deemed to be bad, or some of this character is evil, and then much later on there's an act of kindness, and you're completely being pulled in different kind of emotions, thinking, well, am I meant to dislike or like this character? I mean, even Mildred, as the woman who rightly so is seeking justice, is not always going about it in the right way, so you can find yourself to be critical of her actions.
Well, yeah, I mean, she puts the billboards up, and the billboards are basically saying to the police chief, Willoughby, who played by Woody Harrelson, get your act together, mate. So she's having a right go at him, and then later in the film, he pays for her to have her second month with the billboards up. She even sets fire to the police station, doesn't she? She chucks Molotov cocktails at the police station. So you could be forgiven for arguing that she's actually quite unhinged and actually quite violent. And has she gone too far, despite the horrible thing that happened to her daughter? Is torching a police station with Molotov cocktails really the sort of thing that a grieving parent does? But again, later, there is that moment of redemption. I think it's so well put together and multi-layered.
So it may well be that some of our viewers and listeners have not seen Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing. So we're not going to say much more than you must watch it. You're going to really enjoy it as a bit of storytelling, cinematography, but also this element of, as Roger brought to my attention, grabbing someone's attention and so on. But I just wanted to, without giving too much away, the ending is interesting. And my question to you, Roger, will they not?
Yes, it's one of those Hitchcockian endings, isn't it? It's the sort of ending where it could lead to a sequel, but I hope it doesn't, because I think a sequel would ruin it. But it does leave enough up in the air for you could sit down and have a debate about, as you say, and we don't want to give away the plot, but they leave town on a mission, a man and woman on a mission, not to demystify concept marketing, but to track down this potential killer. And what are they going to do if and when they find him? And, well, yeah, I mean, she's already torched a police station with Molotov cocktails. You know, one respect, you could think she's going to string the guy up and slice off his skin layer by layer. But then maybe, because the film's full of redemption, there may be an element, a moment of forgiveness where she lets this person off if she ever finds him. So, I mean, I've never thought of it like that. Maybe that's what we're supposed to think. Is she going to exact revenge, or is there going to be a moment of forgiveness coming through? Wow.
I mean, for me, this film feels like a fable. You know, because obviously Ebbing is a fictional town, and interestingly, people living there are all kind of quirky characters, and usually the outsiders who come in from outside of Ebbing always seem to be a bit perplexed by the behaviour of all, from the police to Mildred and a few others. But I think it's right. It's about drawing out morality. It's about drawing out lessons in life. It's about obviously inviting the film goers and people watching it together to discuss it after, which I think is always a mark of a great film, when you end up discussing it afterwards.
Yeah, and I've watched quite a few films recently, which I would probably describe as scary, small American town type films, where the cops always seem to be bent, and there seems to be a lot of corruption and quite a lot of violence, especially within families. So this one sort of rises above that. It's not a cliche. It genuinely gets you thinking about, you know, just something happens, and in this case, something as simple as putting up 3 posters has a knock-on effect which affects so many people within the town. It's a different film than we've, you know, it's not science fiction, it's not fantasy, it's not action, shoot 'em up, that sort of thing. It's a more cerebral type film, this, Pascal. But
it is
definitely good.
And for me, you know, what I like about it, it's almost, you know, using a safe formula, which is something happens to a town, and we observe individuals reacting to that sudden change to their kind of quiet life or kind of linear life. But within that, whilst it is a safe formula, we have moments where you're shocked and surprised. But I go back to this idea of, you know, it's just like a news item. 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, and then you suddenly observe, you know, what's happening whilst that is the case. Shall we try and extract some marketing lessons for the purpose of this podcast, Roger?
Yeah, again, it just plays into that whole simplicity thing. You know, the posters showing the backs of the billboards was at once intriguing, raised expectations, was phenomenally simple but phenomenally clever. And, you know, that they didn't do massive social media campaigns for these films and multiple different styles of trailers and you know, sponsorships. It was pretty simple and based around those posters and a couple of trailers here and there, wasn't it?
And I think for me, the one element that they did very well, although they will say the marketing execution was simple, you're right, there was 1 or 2 posters. There was definitely one, what they call red band trailer, where this is the uncut version. I will say, both in the trailer and the movies, I don't think I've ever heard so much profanity ever in any movies, apart from maybe Tarantino, as you mentioned. So that red band trailer was quite something. Then they did a different trailer, which is actually more around Mildred and how she's dealing with the sense of loss and so on. And then, the usual social media kind of activities. But one thing they did really well, more than maybe other movies you and I've reviewed, is the use of film festival over a long period of time.
Yeah, and again, sitting here, my own immediate reaction was, it's a dull title for a film. You would have thought, actually, they would have had to have pulled the stops out and blitzed it as much as they possibly could across multiple platforms to get people to be interested in something that actually sounds pretty dull. But they must have had a massive amount of confidence in the quality of the script and the acting and the cinematography and the direction. They knew it was going to be successful, and therefore they chose this less in-your-face approach. And again, maybe the word of mouth that came out of those film festivals was enough to make it go big.
Well, quite. I mean, let's not forget, the many awards that it won. I mean, I just did a quick look on my go-to website, like many others out there, IMDb, for in preparation with this podcast. 223 nominations across around the world, winning 132 awards, including 2 Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
This is not, a small win. And it's back to this idea of, trying to derive a lesson from this. Do we, all of us as content creators, do we do enough to really promote the content we produce, or are we too quick to move on to the next execution? So are we doing enough to make sure that video, that podcast, that article is featured on networks of sort, our version of Film Festival, or are we sometimes tempted to say, well, I've done a podcast, thank you very much, next one, as opposed to squeezing more value and more exposure from that one bit of content?
Oh, Pascal, I'm guilty of this every day. I post a new episode of a podcast. We post an episode of this podcast. I post a video. You post a video. We do a few tweets. We do a few emails, and we move on to the next one. Sometimes I think, no, maybe we should have a sustained, absolute blitz of promoting one piece of content, and just see how much more we can elevate it.
No, absolutely. Anything else that comes to mind, Roger, when it comes to potential marketing lessons?
Not really. I just love the simplicity of this. I think the film sells itself. The intrigue gets you into the film, and once you've watched the first 10 minutes, you can't avoid watching the rest of it. I actually did watch it again last weekend after we decided we were going to do this film today, and I remember enjoying it the first time. I think the second time I immersed myself even more in the dialogue, and I think that this is a dialogue-rich film, and it is just so good. Every line is quotable, and every line can stir up the emotion and stir up sadness, happiness, redemption, whatever it might be. It's a remarkably well-written film.
Funny you mentioned, I'm just picking up what you said, the first 10 minutes and then you're in.
Yes.
Have you noticed that for a number of those movies on the official YouTube channel, you can now watch for free the first 10 minutes? Warner Brothers are doing it, obviously. I can't remember the distribution company for this one, but I just suddenly remembered that it's becoming now a more common marketing tactic to literally showcase the first 10 minutes of any films on YouTube with the calls to action to then rent, buy, or stream. So back to a lesson that we may have just improvised, you and I, just now. Should we find ways to, again, give people that first 10 minutes across our network, and not necessarily just a full version? Just a thought.
Yeah, come on, United Artists. We want the first 10 minutes of No Time to Die, because we're fed up with waiting for the full 120 minutes of it.
Excellent. Well, Monsieur Roger Edwards, this was episode 29. It was a good one, as they say around here.
Good one. Very good one. 29 episodes, Pascal. Unbelievable. And it's still as exciting and enjoyable recording these sessions as it was when we did episode number 1.
Likewise, my dear friend. And to our viewers and listeners, thank you again for your support. Do drop your messages. They make a big, big difference at this moment in time. Until the next one, make sure that your marketing is done right. I was Pascal Fintoni, and he was Roger Edwards. Bye for now.